Welcome back, everyone. We're here at CPAC, sitting down with former Representative Dave Brat. And Dave Brat, real pleasure having you on.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Great.
So, one of the themes here is kind of pushing back against this cancel culture.
Yeah.
And one of the big things that's going to be announced going forward, Trump's going to very likely start pushing this grassroots movement under the office of the former president. But moving into that's a difficult space because, as we know, community organizing, Saul Alinsky, this whole type of, say, activist grassroots movements, it's well saturated. Where do you see this going?
Yeah, well, it's a noble project, and all the rest of us mortals have tried it in office, right? And then there's a huge wave, and those waves flushed me out back in 2018. But Trump is unique with the megaphone he has. And so, that'll be the issue. Can you cut through? The left has overtaken us on the cultural front. They own every institution, not only culturally, right? Higher ed and the mass media, the Inc.,
and this has really affected, I think, Americans' ability to kind of even be open to ideas like this. What is the state of kind of the American character with this?
Well, unfortunately, the state of our character is weakness right now. Everyone's scared. We have not been nurtured or grown up and educated in the virtues. And it's showing right now, right? I mean, you got, kids are disrespecting their seniors, the parents, the family's under assault, the state is under assault. The left, it's a Marxist play, and not enough people know who Marx is.
Yeah, so tell us about this. Yeah, what's the cause of all this? Where did this stuff all come from?
Yeah, I mean, you just go back to Marx, and this is just straight out of the playbook, right? So what's the first thing you do if you want to assume power? So that's the first thing you got to know is, you've grown up in the Judeo-Christian West, right? Whether you're in that tradition or not, it doesn't matter. You've grown up with that value system around you, where you think we all love one another. You think we care about kids' education. You think we care about wage rates going up. You think you care about, having a nice civil society and where your kids can play and do sports and have fun. That's shot. Marxists care about maximizing one thing. It's not happiness, it's power. And they will do anything in order to achieve that outcome. So if you read your news stories with that in mind, you'll see, how can the left be doing this? Well, easy. Why do you ask the question? Don't you? What you just said, I don't care what the story is, they're maximizing power. And so that's when it comes to Trump going against that, or the grassroots network, we don't have much power right now. We don't have the press. They have monopolized and corrupted the FBI. Back with the beginning, before Trump was even inaugurated, with the file that they developed from Russian assets. They have a corrupt CIA. The deep state used to be off limits for us Republicans to mention the word. Now it's just a matter of fact.
Yeah, I remember the articles, actually. They were saying it was conspiracy theory, and then they come out and say, yes, there's a deep state, and it's working for it. This is the mainstream media saying this.
Yeah.
They're admitting it exists, and they're trying to change the narrative on it. Yeah.
And then the most dangerous part, I lost 16% of the electorate when healthcare was socialized. So you lost all big business related to healthcare if you're on the Republican side. But now they've captured all of corporate America. Because if they utter one bad word, your firm is out of business the next day. So they have power, and they're using it to intimidate. They have barbed wire around the Capitol. If Americans don't see what's going on, right, and then go read your Plato's Republic, right? What comes after democracy? The tyrant. Mm-hmm. And so you got to ask yourself, do Republicans who want a small state, can we be responsible if you want a small state for the rise of the tyrant? No, the folks who want the big state and total control, and Epic Times, you guys do super reporting, that is the big state. So if you like the big state, keep voting the way you are, and you'll be under the thumb in a few years.
Yeah. Well, if we go back, you mentioned that kind of America really in the West. If you're in the West, whether you practice it or not, you are in a system that was created by Judeo-Christian values.
Right.
But the battle of ideas has been going on for a long time. And go back to the Enlightenment, back to the French Revolution, back to Marx.
Yep.
And really, you've had these dueling ideologies going on from the Enlightenment till now, and it's funny. It plays such a big part in academics, but nobody really talks about this dueling of ideas.
Right.
How do you see this kind of unfolding over the years?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. There has been a duel. I did a PhD in economics, and my man, Adam Smith, was buddies with Hume, one of the world's best philosophers. Hume wouldn't sign the Calvinist thing at Oxford or in Scotland or whatever, Glasgow. Adam Smith would. But you see kind of the guardrails there, right? It's always been kind of Athens and Jerusalem, right? You got the Greek reason, and then you got the Judeo-Christian revelation, and those have always been the guardrails that protected us, for good or for bad. No one says the Judeo-Christian system is perfect. We had the fall in Genesis. So, it's our whole system assumes fallen human nature, and then you try to do as best you can. But yet, there's no ethics taught right now in K-12 education, which should be a shocker, right? No right or wrong, and there's no system of thought, right? There's no philosophy, there's no ethics, there's no religion taught, and then we're shocked that we end up in the abyss. And Nietzsche, anticipated all this and said God is dead in Europe, and the question is God going to be dead here? And Nietzsche was not saying this as a cheap shot. He was a brilliant analyst. I disagree with his project, but he anticipated where we are. He knew the sacred is what defines culture, and so Nietzsche said, "Who gave us culture?" And it wasn't Immanuel Kant in the Enlightenment. It wasn't John Stuart Mill and Bentham in the Enlightenment. It's not, reason can't produce ethics. He said, and he's right, it's Moses and Jesus and Confucius and Buddha. There's your cultures, right? And so Marx and the left are trying to crush those foundations of culture. And if you'll notice, when the Marxists tear down a statue, they don't have anyone to replace. There's no one good enough, right?
Yeah.
So they just say, just trust us. We're going to seize power, and then we'll see how you do. I don't like that bet personally. Well, it's not a good bet.
And Marx says that in the Communist Manifesto, that communism destroys all religion and morality,
right,
and puts nothing in their place.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's it. He said that God and ethics and human rights even are superstructure created by the elites to put the thumb down on the poor. Right? And at the time he's writing, if you look at capitalists, a capitalist in 1840 owns a horse and a plow. These aren't modern hedge funds. I got problem with some of these. Our modern capitalists.
And you mentioned Nietzsche as well, and the quote "God is dead" is oftentimes taken out of context.
Yes.
And a lot of people think it's like some atheist hymn.
Nope.
But actually, no. He was warning people.
Yes.
He was saying, you killed these moral foundations, and what are we going to become as humankind, basically, without these things?
Yes.
Because this is the foundation of moral society and social stability.
Yeah. And he was, he called it nihilism. If the sacred goes away, and you see then you see kind of the European society, it's kind of dark. The clothes are dark. People on the train ain't smiling, and there's a somberness when the divine spark is not present. And so Americans can't deal with that. We're intrinsically a positive people, right? And I think the American spirit is still there, but we're just weak. And so where is that reserve of strength going to come from? I think there's going to have to be some sort of a reawakening. Hopefully it's a merger of the two again, of philosophical greatness and theological revelation. That's served us well. And, it's in stark contrast to China. And China has infiltrated our institutions, our universities, the press. Now Biden has just signed off. They get to make, power transformers for our electrical grid again. And you're like, so just follow the money. But if you follow the money toward China, you're going to also get their ideology in the end. And I'm scared of that one.
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned a lot about reason, and this goes back to the Enlightenment and the idea that human reason is to a degree at which we no longer need belief in religion and morals and ethics.
Right.
And, it's ironic because we can look back at the French Revolution, which was really a product, as was socialism, which emerged later from the same movements.
Yep.
It was a product of that. They had the cult of reason, the first atheist state religion, actually.
Right.
And, they tried doing it.
Yes.
And it was this idea that they could remake humankind. They could toss about all of tradition, all of culture, all of belief. They had the anti-Christian movement where they were killing priests and so on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they tried it. And then it was tried again under the Bolsheviks, tried again under the communists, tried again and again and again. Same results every time.
Yeah.
Because what they find is that culture, tradition, faith, religion, family, what is passed down through culture is what works.
Yes, right.
What is passed down is what works, and they think that if reason reaches a level where you can use reason to remake what has worked, oftentimes you create something that fails.
Right. And there are. It's interesting. The Pope, he wrote a recent little paperback, and he's got the big three that he wants, and it's liberty, equality, and fraternity. These are the great triune of the French Revolution.
That was their slogan.
Yes.
That was their slogan.
By the sitting Pope. And so I hope he's just a utopian. I hope it's still on the positive track, right?
Yeah.
But it's a little scary when the Pope's coming out for those and doesn't mention the big three, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. It's like, hello, have we moved or what's going on
This is an interesting discussion because this is the foundation of Western philosophical debate going back a few hundred years.
Yes.
The conflict between reason and faith.
Yep.
And, where do you see this? Because a lot of people think, well, how can you have faith without reason, and how can you have reason without faith?
Right.
Well, how do you see this kind of dichotomy working?
Well, the reason track started off with Plato, right? Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. And that type of reason, no problem. That's the Western synthesis, right? So Augustine absorbed Plato, Aquinas absorbed Aristotle, and that's our tradition. And that's reason with a big R, bold ideas, truth, first mover.
Yeah, well, and of course, they talked a lot about ethics and morals, and a lot of it was saturated in traditional belief as well. Yeah,
right? You couldn't contradict, right? Why is there something instead of nothing? Because there's a creator. Right now, the modern physicists...
And they talked about virtue as being kind of the root of all this as well.
Core. Yeah. And it's the core of politics.
But you said the modern guys have deviated
The
from
modern
that,
guys, there's a school of thought called logical positivism. These guys are brilliant. Bertrand Russell, Wittgenstein, these guys, about 1920. And they had logical positivism. Knowledge was limited to sense perception. So they're trying to get rid of God, right? Because there's no sense perception of God. But they also found there's no sense perception of the term science. Have you ever seen a science? Have you ever touched a science? No. Have you ever touched a hypothesis? Right? No. So all the methodological terms of science went bye-bye. And so the Reason Project turned into kind of an epistemology knowledge project, and now it crashed. And nothing has replaced it. That's the scary part, right?
Well, and the real scary part of this is that even when ideas crash, they subsist.
Yes.
People latch on to the kind of earlier stages of the ideas as they developed and never follow them to their completion, realizing, hey, this thing didn't work.
It didn't work. Right.
Like cough socialism.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
No, and that's a great point right there. That we don't follow it through to the conclusion, and I think that's what you're doing a great service. Because if you don't follow it through, you just let it be this emotional knee-jerk, you end up with a China society, and you don't have human rights, and you have re-education camps with millions in it, and you don't have freedom, and you don't have a soul. And the Chinese, rumor has it, there's 100, 200 million Christians forming right now because the basic human spirit demands it. So we'll see. Maybe there's some good news coming.
Someone told me something funny. Actually, I have a Chinese friend. He's like, you know what Chinese kids do when they rebel?
Yeah,
they become Christians.
Right? That's awesome. I love. That's when I'm in favor of rebellion. Right? That's a great one.
But that's the irony of when the guys who used to be the radicals become the totalitarians.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? They become the uncool totalitarian.
Yep.
Don't do this, don't do that, folks.
Yep.
And when kids rebel against it, that's the new system of rebellion.
Yeah.
That's why people say conservatism is like the new punk.
No, I hope, and we've got to make it cool. We need some thought leaders, and so it's all on your shoulders, the young generation.
Oh, yeah, I got it. Yeah.
You guys, but make it exciting, and I think young people do have a hunger for the great truths in Western Civ, and so we'll see if these ideas catch fire again.
Great. So I guess just last thoughts. We're kind of at this real critical point in American culture right now where you really do still have this battling of ideas.
Yeah.
Something's going on since the French Revolution, since the Enlightenment, right? We're seeing the boiling up, the kind of final synthesis, to use their own terms for it,
right. That's
of this battle of ideas. Seeing this, we're going to tell people one thing about how to recognize it and how to understand this conflict of ideas in our society. What would you tell them?
The easiest way to recognize the conflict of ideas is when the conflict is not allowed. When your kid can't go to school and ask questions. What's God? What's a God thing? Who made this thing? How did we get to be here? Leibniz. Why is there something instead of nothing? If your kid cannot ask the question and there is no debate of the great ideas, the Judeo-Christian system, both the Jewish and the Christian, have always allowed a wide berth for unbelief, right? Our Constitution was framed on freedom for non-belief as well. You can reject within that system of freedom. And so when you're not allowed to reject that system, I would reject, right? And so I think that's what you got to look for. When you're any institution you're in and they do not allow for you to freely express, right? You ought to welcome the greatest ideas. I welcome Marx. I welcome Nietzsche. They're the exact antithesis of my program, right? Nietzsche wanted the artist to revalue all values with no guardrails, no reason or revelation, just the artist, the creator, the co-creator with God in this new sacred that he was creating on a whim. I don't like that. That scares the daylights out of me. I don't want to see where that goes.
Yeah.
And so, but I think, these ideas stimulate the kids, and especially at the university level. If they don't allow the pursuit of truth, Harvard's motto in 1640 was truth for Christ and church, believe it or not. At Harvard, 1640, that's their mission statement. Truth for Christ and church. Now they reject truth and, of course, the church and Christ. And so, and they won't even allow the debate now. And so that's what I'd look for. Send your kid to a university where there's a free flow debate still allowed so they can get a true education.
Hey, Dave Brat, real pleasure having you on Crossroads.
Thank you, Josh. Yeah, awesome. Thank you, brother. It's great.